Welcome everyone today to a video where I will be describing some of the intricacies of air bases or airfields, I think it's what they're technically called, and how they work in Civilization 3, and also um, specifically what sort of interactions you can expect with them, and also their impact in the the future start scenario. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is some of the really basic interactions and how air bases are different than cities and things like that when it comes to the planes and the units that they interact with. So to start with, a very basic concept is that you can have bombers in cities or any type of plane in cities. They are susceptible to damage though. So ground artillery cannot in fact hit a plane in a city. You see it will just say artillery bombardment failed. But cruise missiles, they can. They can damage, you see, so they can damage planes. And along with that, bombers can also damage other planes. Well, they can damage planes. I have animations on, as annoying as that is, just so that you can see that like stuff is actually trying to happen. Yeah, so you see like that. Okay. So this cannot happen though with air bases. So again, radar already cannot target, and any ground-based artillery cannot target any sort of plane. A bomber also though cannot target a plane. See, it doesn't even say bombing failed. It just doesn't do anything, right? And like, you can see this again, ready? There's no message that even goes. And the same is true of cruise missiles. If you shoot a cruise missile at it, just nothing happens. It just eats the cruise. Absolutely nothing happens. So bases with no units on them, other than planes, are actually impervious to any sort of bombardment damage. Now, if the base gets captured, all the planes die, obviously, but especially for like internal land defense, this can be a really nice thing to apply. If your fighters keep getting shot out of the cities, you put your fighters on an airbase in some sort of central location inside your land, and use that so that they can't bomb the fighters out. They can still win the interception roll, but they can't bomb it out. Okay, planes can target units, ground units on an airbase, and so can artillery, so that's all pretty normal. Now here's an interesting interaction. If you remember, you cannot bomb, like nothing happens. It doesn't even give you a message if you try and bomb an airbase with just planes on it. But an airbase with no units or an airbase with 1 HP units and no planes underneath it can be destroyed. So if you want to make sure your base can't be destroyed, you have to have at least one plane on the base. Okay, so those are some of the basics. If we go up here, can show like something that looks like a game state, unless you look closely enough. And you can see, oh no, they have like a doom stack on me. Many paratroopers, they have, all this stuff, right? Okay. One thing that can happen in the game, and is a very powerful technique for defending against air bases, is if you plant the airbase. This also works if you border expand into the airbase. So if I built like a library in here, and the border expanded, that would also work. But planting the airbase works as well. So let's say it's like, midway through the turn, I walk onto this, I plant the airbase. Okay, first thing you should notice, all of the planes have disappeared from this airbase, right? That's the first thing to notice. The second thing is that you can start airbasing. This is single player, by the way. They still have units here. This is the only way I know of to get your unit to be on the same tile as their units. And this just happens. I mean, this is not like a unusual thing. This is, this is just like an interaction in the game. Now, something weird, you can see I can walk onto this base, supposedly, and not roll a combat. Right? So you saw that happen, right? My unit walked onto the base, and it did not roll a combat. They cannot do that, at least in multiplayer. if this situation happens, they actually have to remove every unit from the airbase before they can start hitting back into this. So the community is still not decided on what they think about this concept, by the way. But as you can see, like, this is now my airbase, right? So I can like move bombers there and everything, right? Like, that's my bomber, even though there's still Chinese units there. So that's this is a very powerful technique for clearing an airbase. For one, it just moves all the planes. They'll all be in Canton now. It just moves all the planes away, which means you buy yourself some time. It's very nice. The other thing it does, though, is it does give you the airbase. And so the community, the multiplayer community, has to make or take a vote, I think, on whether or not you should be allowed to reinforce this base. If it's yours, like, you know, you plant the base, even if there are enemy units there, if you should be allowed to reinforce or allowed to walk on without combat, like I did here from Heidelberg, you see. So it's so yeah, those are just things that we sort of have to decide, because as it is right now, the rules are somewhat unclear about what we're supposed to do in this situation. Okay, you can see this is something else to mention is that the this airbase was planted on a mountain, because in the game you actually do get your units get defense bonuses on the airbase. So the mountain obviously has the highest defense bonus of any tile, so definitely want to be planting your air bases ideally on those. The plains, however, do not benefit from any defense bonus being on an airfield. So when you go into bombing someone's land and the interception rolls start, they don't get the defense bonus for being on a mountain. Okay, so that's this. I think this is a really important discussion we need to be having about whether or not we can allow people to reinforce a base that has enemy units on it or not, or if there are like conditions or situations where that might be acceptable and others where it might not. Okay, the last interaction I wanted to point out, this is a sort of little known fact. Most people will never encounter this situation, but it does happen occasionally where you reach the maximum range that your planes can rebase. So here's a very fascinating thing. So I have this fighter and it will not let me rebase onto my own base, right? So if we well, oh yeah, this will work. So if we go like this, right? So the fighter can't rebase, but the stealth bomber, because it has a longer operational range, can. So there you go. See, that worked. Now, the last sort of interaction I wanted to talk about, which is just something tactically is useful to know, is if you look here, I have this helicopter full of full movement paratroopers. So the paratrooping ability is very strong. If a unit with the paratrooping ability is in a city with an airport or on an airbase, said unit can do what's called airdropping, right? So the way that works is you just, it's like bombing, but then your unit just sort of appears there. But you can see I moved bases. Yeah, so this is what I was saying. All the planes moved back into Canton. It's the closest city to this base. But the thing to notice here is that I was able to helicopter my units over, and that preserves their movement, and then on the same exact turn, airdrop. So you can only airdrop onto open tiles. You can't airdrop onto other ones. This isn't a general planes and airdropping video, so I'm not going to go too into depth about that mechanic. I really just wanted to show how the airfields themselves work. One last thing to note is that the rebase, which is what planes use, so this is rebase, this is limited by the operational range. I believe it's 10 times, no, sorry, I believe it's 5 times the operational range. So for a fighter, that's 40 tiles. For a bomber, that's 50 tiles, something like that. Stealth bomber, it's a ton of tiles. Anyway, the airlift, though, is not capped. This has infinite range. There is no range on airlifting, so you can go across the entire map. No matter how, you can make a 1,000 by 1,000 map, and you could still airlift between bases. Like airports, you can only airlift a single unit per turn from an airport, but an airport can receive as many units as it wants. So like this one, for example, got one from here and one from here. So it can receive as many as you can do, but it can only send one per turn. But it can paradrop as many as you have units to actually use that interaction. So I believe that's everything I wanted to mention about this. But yeah, I think it would be good for us as a community, a multiplayer community, to discuss what we are willing to allow and not allow. Me personally, I kind of am in favor of allowing this sort of strategy. Airbasing is already the meta in the game. It's already very strong. And in my opinion, if you let someone plant your plant a city on your airbase, and they are fast enough to reinforce it, they have the right to keep it. So the only downside of allowing this, in my opinion, is that they do have to empty out the whole airbase before they can start hitting, which is really annoying. But I think that just goes with the territory. So anyway, share your thoughts, and thanks for watching.